At the request of several students, and before we begin enrolling in Year 2 of the Witches' Poisons in-depth course on our seminary website, we are moving some, not all, of Year 1 of the Witches' Poisons in-depth course to YouTube. This is the first of the videos in that series, and I thought we would start with one of the most famous of the witches' poisons, Atropa belladonna. So today we are going to go into the ancient history of Atropa belladonna, and then in the next couple of weeks we'll move into the rest of the information on Atropa belladonna, including its recent history, famous incidents of poisoning, its toxicology, its uses in witchcraft, etc. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it. As a reminder, the Witches' Poisons in-depth course series presents historical information and traditional information about poisons. Please do not ever take this course series as advice for you to go use these poisons yourselves. We take absolutely no responsibility should you choose to make use of this poison in any fashion. This information is presented for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. Right. Additionally, I want to note that this entire course is available on Sanctum Seminary at www.sanctumofthecraft.org. Again, that's www.sanctumofthecraft.org. And the course goes in a lot more depth into information on toxicology and safety and contraindications and side effects, etc., than the YouTube series does. So if you are looking for a more serious herbalism based course, please check out the seminary version. We are accepting enrollments in all of our previously recorded live classes as just videos people can watch as part of the alpha launch of the seminary. So, Atropa belladonna. Common names include nightshade, deadly nightshade, dwale, devil's herb, love apple, sorcerer's cherry, witch's berry, wolf cherry, wolf's berry, poison black cherry, sleeping nightshade, banewort, devil's cherries, naughty man's cherries, great morel, belladonna, belladone, belladame, belladone, solanum lethal, divale, dwayberry, crotal bloom, which means toad flower, hexenbeer, hexenkraut, mandragora theophrasti, mortarbeer, satan's kraut, uvulupina, which means wolfsberry, wolfsbeer, wolfsasage, wolkerbalm, wolkerbeer, and jijibe ledor. Etymology. Atropa comes from Atropos, one of the three fates, the one which held the shears that cut the thread of life. Belladonna literally means beautiful lady, from its use to dilate the eyes of women in Venice, which was believed to make women look sexually aroused and therefore more beautiful. Gerard claimed that belladonna meant beautiful girl, but that was and is incorrect. And Mrs. M. Grieve claimed that the name belladonna is said to record an old superstition that at certain times it takes the form of an enchantress of exceeding loveliness whom it is dangerous to look upon. However, I was unable to find any other evidence to support this. Some authors have also claimed that belladonna comes from the Roman goddess of war Bellona, and that her priests would ritually consume wine infused with this plant. I have yet to find any evidence to support this either. If you have any evidence to support any of these claims, please send it my way, but I was unable to back that up out of the historical record. Other names. During the Middle Ages, the plant was often referred to as dwale, which may come from the Latin dolere, to suffer, or from the French duel, grief, or from the Scandinavian dul, to mean delay or sleep. Confusion. There are mentions throughout ancient literature of strychnos manicos, the strychnos that makes one wild, which was a potent psychoactive plant and poisoned, mentioned by herbalists and historians such as Theophrastus, Dioscorides, and Pliny the Elder. Various ethnobotanists, historians, and anthropologists have interpreted this to be either Atropa belladonna, Deuteris ramonium, Solanum, Strychnos nux-vomica, Withanium somnifera, and Physalis species. Likely, the name strychnos was an umbrella term for psychoactive poisonous plants. There is confusion as well between deadly nightshade and woody nightshade or bittersweet nightshade. Atropa belladonna is the true deadly nightshade, but some online sources falsely identify Solanum dulcamara, bittersweet or bittersweet nightshade, or woody nightshade, or Solanum nigrum, black nightshade, as deadly nightshade. Make sure that you know what you're purchasing if you were to purchase any of these online, and if you are identifying them for yourself in the wild, please know what you're doing and identify things correctly. All right, ancient history. Archaeobotanical data from 250 Neolithic sites from Europe to the East Mediterranean geographic regions demonstrate a clear route of migration of plant use along the Danube and up into the Rhine Valley. The plant findings demonstrate some kind of trade in plant knowledge from Thessalian Greece to the Balkans, Bulgaria and Macedonia, and into the rest of Europe. The botanical data from these sites included Atropa belladonna along with verbena, Verbena officinalis, agramony, Agramonia upetoria, henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, ribwort plantain, Plantego lanceolata, poppy, Papaver somnifera, and wild strawberry, Fragaria vesca. The archaeological records of Romania and Moldova demonstrate that Atropa belladonna may have been used ritually there since before 4000 BCE. To this day, the predominant culture around Atropa belladonna in Romania and Moldova is that it grants extended life. In modern-day Romania and Moldova, it is still used as an additive in wine, making the wine psychoactive. One of the oldest uses for Atropa belladonna in the world, one which likely dates to pre-Britain records, is to create a juice into which chunks of meat would be dipped before being put out into the woods in order to poison wolves. This practice was and is so widespread that the common names for Atropa belladonna in many languages translate to wolf cherry or wolfberry. Some historians claim that Atropa belladonna was used to poison arrow tips as aconite was, and that when Pliny the Elder recorded Dorygnion, the spear drug, he was referring to Atropa belladonna. However, tests performed on ancient spears and arrows have yet to find archaeological evidence to support the use of Atropa belladonna in this fashion. Aconite, on the other hand, which was part of this course series as well, they did find evidence of that on spears and arrows. The ancient Egyptian Ebers papyrus, which dates to 1550 BCE, detailed the use of an extract of Atropa belladonna as an anesthetic. It is possible that the psychoactive wine of the Bacchanalian rituals of ancient Greece contained Atropa belladonna. Hecate was said to have had a botanical garden on the island of Colchis, where she grew Atropa belladonna under the name Thryon, along with other poisonous plants, including aconitum and mandragoras, so Mandragora officinarum. Both Atropa belladonna and Mandragora officinarum have been theorized to have been used by the sorceress Circe to turn Odysseus's crew into pigs. Of these, I personally feel Mandragora officinarum is more likely due to one of the names that it was called by in the 1st century CE, which is Circeia, which connects the plant to her use of it. The famous Greek physician Hippocrates of Kos, broadly considered to be the father of Western medicine, was likely aware of and used Atropa belladonna. Amongst the 400 plus natural agents recorded in the Corpus Hippocraticum by his students and followers of his methods, Atropa belladonna was used as an anesthetic. As a reminder, Hippocrates didn't actually write the Hippocratic Corpus. It was written by people who ascribed to his methodology and who credited him for their ideas, so sort of students of students of students. In circa 301 BCE, Theophrastus, a Greek philosopher and the successor to Aristotle in the Peripatetic school, wrote about the strychnos and their abilities, likely describing Atropa belladonna and Deuteris ramonium. Of the plants called strychnos, one induces sleep, the other causes madness. It is my personal belief that the one that causes sleep is probably a reference to Atropa belladonna, and the other, the one that causes madness, is probably a reference to Deuteris ramonium. The kind which produces madness has a white hollow root about a cubit long, Of this, 3/20 of an ounce in weight is given if the patient is to become merely sportive and to think himself a fine fellow, twice this dose if he is to go mad outright and have delusions, thrice this dose if he is to be permanently insane, 4 times the dose is given if the man is to be killed. It is likely, according to records from Rome and Byzantium from the 2nd century BCE to the 7th century CE, that the use of Atropa belladonna was common as a surgical anesthetic, sedative, and analgesic. Livia Drusilla, the Roman empress from 27 BCE to 14 CE, and the wife of the Emperor Caesar Augustus, was rumored to have used the juice of Atropa belladonna in order to murder her husband, the aforementioned emperor. Pliny the Elder may have identified Atropa belladonna as strychnos, but he may also have been identifying Solanum nigrum. He mentioned another variety of the plant which was very poisonous and thus outside of his interest, and it's possible that the plant he was referring to as being too poisonous to use was Atropa belladonna. In circa 40 CE to 70 CE, Atropa belladonna may have been recorded in the Greek De Materia Medica by Pedanius Dioscorides, the father of pharmacognosy, Greek physician, pharmacologist, and botanist. If it was likely recorded as morios, which other Greek medical authors identified as strychnon hypnoticon. Cleopatra VII Philopator, queen of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt from 51 to 30 BCE, may have used Atropa belladonna to dilate her pupils or as a fatal poison, or both. Some historians claim that she used her prisoners and slaves in early poison trials, and that she was disappointed that Atropa belladonna and Hyoscyamus niger caused too much pain while killing, even when they killed rapidly. In 754 CE, in the Arab world, one of the first apothecaries offering both herbal and some chemical remedies as well as medical advice opened. These grew and spread from the Muslim to the Western world. The Arabs introduced numerous new plants into pharmacotherapy, many imported from India. Amongst the plants available at the apothecaries was Atropa belladonna, along with aloe vera, Hyoscyamus niger, Coffea arabica, Gingiber officinale, and strychnos, likely Solanum nigrum, but possibly Deuterus stramonium, saffron, which is Crocus sativus, and various others. Belladonna was introduced into Germany sometime during late antiquity or the early Middle Ages. The German names for the plant then and now primarily reference it as a psychoactive. They refer to it as Schlafbier, sleeping berry, or Reiswurz, mad root, or Tolkkirsch, crazy cherry, or Wutbier, rage berry. Some refer to it in ways that reference wolves, wolfseish, so wolf's eye, which may be a reference to the use of poisoned meat to kill wolves, and may be a reference to its associations with Wotan and his wolf warriors. There's some debate about that. I do not claim that my German pronunciation is in any way accurate. In Europe, stone carvings on pillars of the Abbey of Corcomro in Ireland that date to 1205 CE may represent Atropa belladonna blossoms. Historians believe that both Atropa belladonna and Papaver somniferum were grown there by the monks and are depicted on these pillars. In the Middle Ages, folklore around Atropa belladonna was that it was the property of the devil, and that anyone who picked the berries might have to face the devil directly. This may have been a way to keep children from eating the berries, basically tell them that it's associated with evil and the devil, and that if they eat it, the devil will come to them and they won't eat it anymore. In the 15th century, minor poisoning became a strange form of entertainment to European nobility. European nobility would drug other nobles' meals and beverages with small doses of Atropa belladonna and Hyoscyamus species, and then the intoxicated person's behavior would be mocked. According to some historians, the poisoned persons would be convinced that they had been transformed into animals. Johann Wonek van Cube, the German naturalist and physician, in his book Hortus Sanitatis, published in 1485 CE, recorded the use of nightshade balsam, either Atropa belladonna or Solanum. When applied to the temples and wrists, it was said to act as a soporific, and when applied to the navel, it was said to cause sweating. The recipe contained nightshade balsam, so again either Atropa or Solanum, leaves, mandrake, Mandragora officinarum leaves, bitter lettuce, so Lactuca virosa leaves, poppy, Papaver somniferum leaves, Jove's beard, so Semper vivum tectorum leaves, poplar, so Populus nigra buds, wild orchis from the orchis species, wine, and unsalted Rheinburger lard. Almost identical recipes were shortly thereafter associated primarily with witchcraft. Illustrations of Atropa belladonna began to appear around 1500 CE, although accurate botanical illustrations took another 30 years to appear, much later than accurate botanical illustrations of Hyoscyamus and Mandragora. Leonhard Fuchs, a German physician and botanist, depicted Atropa belladonna under the name Solanum somniferum in his De Historia Strypium Commentari Insignis, notable commentaries on the history of plants, published in 1542 CE. Girolamo Cardano, the physician, mathematician, natural scientist, and philosopher, believed that witches were miserable, usually elderly women who lived in solitude and were emaciated on a poor diet. He thought that their belief that they interacted with any otherworldly powers or flew was due to their poor diet and to witches' ointments, which caused hallucinations rather than true interactions with spiritual forces and planes. In his De Subtilitate, published in 1550 CE, he recorded a recipe for an ointment that would cause illusory visions that consisted of nightshade, again either Atropa or Solanum, monkshood, Aconitum napellus, celery, probably Apium graveolens, cinquefoil, Potentilla reptans, soot, and baby fat. I highly recommend that if you ever make a flying ointment, you just use fat, not specifically baby fat. He described the ointment's effects on the psyche as theaters, pleasure gardens, banquets, beautiful ornaments and clothing, handsome young men, kings and magistrates, demons, ravens, prisons, desert wastes, and torments. Andres Laguna de Segovia, a Spanish humanist physician, pharmacologist, and botanist who related ancient discussions of hallucinogenic properties of plants to the witchcraft of his time, stated, "Most delusions of witches and wizards must be due to the ointments with which they anoint themselves." He claimed to have found a pot of poplar ointment in the home of a married couple accused of witchcraft. He also recounted an experiment similar to accounts by Nider and Tostado, wherein he requested the executioner's wife to anoint herself from head to foot with the ointment, and she had 3 days of visions of flying, feasting, and having sex. In his Pedanius Dioscorides of Anas Arbus, in 1555 CE, a translation of Dioscorides with so many commentaries that it doubled the length of the original, he described the ointment as containing deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, mandrake, Mandragora officinarum, and hemlock, Conium maculatum, and an unspecified fat, not infant fat in this case. He did explicitly state that it was a variation of a surgeon's poplar ointment. He also wrote that he had considerable difficulty identifying the nightshades in modern ointments used by witches and in the writings of Dioscorides. He differentiated between Solanum somniferum, Atropa belladonna, and Solanum furiosum vel manicum, which he identified as either Trichnos, likely hemlock, Conium maculatum, or Stramonia, likely Datura stramonium. Having gone through the exact same records that he went through, I agree it's sometimes quite difficult to figure out what the ancients were referring to in their herbal records, and I mostly agree with his conclusions. In the Scottish humanist George Buchanan's book, The History of Scotland, published in 1582, Buchanan claimed that Macbeth's soldiers, under the command of Duncan I, poisoned the entire Danish army with Atropa belladonna poisoned liquor, referred to as tainted liquor, while under the auspices of a truce. While they suffered from the poisoning, they were murdered in their sleep by the Scots. The description of the berries, which are pretty large and black when ripe, grow out from the stalk under the root of the leaves. The taste of the juice is sweet and almost insipid. The seed is small like the grains of a fig. Does match Atropa belladonna, and whale was a common name for it at the time, so I do actually agree with this conclusion. Johannes Weir, a Dutch physician, occultist, and demonologist, as well as disciple and follower of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, wrote in his De Prestigiis Daemonem, yeah, I think I said that right. I really need to brush up on my Latin. In 1583, various recipes of illusions of flight, sex, and feasting, as well as describing at least one salve as being a variation of a surgeon's salve. Amongst his ingredients, he included selenum, selenum somniferum, and selenum furiosum somnificum. The first two probably reference deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, and the latter most likely references deuterostramonium. One recipe, which Weir claimed was a variation of a surgeon's salve, was to be rubbed into the skin to cause sleep and the illusion of flight, sex, and feasting, and it combined henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, seeds, with deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, berries, hemlock, Conium maculatum, seeds, lettuce, Lactusa virosa seeds, red and black poppy, Papaver somniferum seeds, Theban opium, a preparation made from Papaver somniferum, darnel, Lolium tementulum seeds, and purslane, Portulaca oleracea seeds. Giambattista della Porta, possibly the most famous magician of the mid-16th century, copied Cardano's recipe and used many of his words verbatim in his Magia Naturalis, first published in 1589 and then republished in 1658. He added another recipe that left out baby fat but added bat's blood. He also listed several simples that would cause sensations of flying. Della Porta also repeated the idea found in Cardano that the perception of witches that they were flying was a delusion caused by eating certain foods, such as beans, which are drying and flatulent. He also claimed to have carried out the experiment previously claimed to have been carried out by the Spanish physician Andres Laguna de Segovia, who observed the use of flying ointment on an executioner's wife during the witch trials. The ointments he recorded were to be rubbed vigorously on the neck, throat, hands, and feet, and they created the illusions of sleep, flight, sex, feasting, and pleasant dreams of fields and gardens. One recipe consisted of garden nightshade, so Atropa or selenum again, datura, deuterostramonium, monkshood, Aconitum napellus, and wild celery, probably Apium graveolens, and poplar, again, Populus nigra, baby fat, and soot. You really don't need it to be baby fat. Another recipe called for nightshade, again, Atropa or selenum, yellow iris, Iris pseudoacorus, cinquefoil, Potentilla reptans, water parsnip, probably Berula erecta, and the blood of a bat. He recorded a potion to be taken internally that would cause sleep, temporary madness, and the illusion of metamorphosis into a bird or a beast. It consisted of henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, deuterostramonium, and mandrake, Mandragora officinarum. The 1589 edition of Magia Naturalis and its English translation omit the recipes for flying ointments, but contain recipes for causing good and evil dreams, including Della Porta's account of dreams of fields, gardens, trees, flowers, and meadows. In 1584, Reginald Scott, an Englishman and Member of Parliament, published The Discovery of Witchcraft. Like the aforementioned work of Ware, it was written against the belief in witches. Part of its content exposed how some feats of magic were performed using sleight of hand and stage magic. He recorded several flying ointment recipes, though he believed that they affected the brain and did not truly enable a witch to fly. He said the witches rubbed their bodies with the salves till they took red and be very hot, so as the pores may be opened and their flesh soluble and loose. One of his recipes called for Sium suave, the water parsnip or hemlock water parsnip, Acarum vargare, so Acorus calamus, pentaphyllon, which is cinquefoil, the blood of a flittermouse, which is bat's blood, selenum somniferum, Atropa belladonna, and oleum. One of his recorded recipes called for nightshade, so Atropa or selenum species, yellow iris, Iris pseudoacorus, cinquefoil, Potentilla reptans, water parsnip, Berula erecta, oil, and the blood of a bat, and was basically identical to one of the recipes recorded by Giambattista della Porta in Magia Naturalis. Johann Georg Godelmann, in his Tractatus de Magis, Venefice et Lemis, published in 1591, recorded a flying ointment accompanied by a spell or charm to get up and out and on nothing, as in flight by the devil's power. Godelmann attributed the original recipe to Paracelsus's Magna Philosophia, which cannot be considered a coherent text. Paracelsus, upon his death, left behind the table of contents for the work, and it was partially reconstructed from individually handed down works and fragments by Johannes Husser. The currently extant portions of the work do not contain this recipe. It contained nightshade, Atropa or selenum species, hemlock, Conium maculatum, poppy, Papaver somniferum, and babies, cooked into the form of a sauce. The Italian herbalist Pietro Andrea Gregorio Mattioli was the first known source of the name belladonna for Atropa belladonna, and he recorded that Italian women would drip juice pressed from the plant into their eyes to make themselves more beautiful. French magistrate Nicolas Remy's De Monnaie Libretres from 1595 was an extremely important early work on demons and witches drawn from the trials of approximately 900 people who were tried and put to death in a 15-year span in the Duchy of Lorraine for the crime of witchcraft. He recorded several recipes, some applied on the forehead, others applied with brooms, although most of his recipes were for maleficent poisons rather than flight. He also claimed that some witches could fly without ointment at all. Remy did not believe the ointments had psychoactive or entheogenic effects, and so when witches would use that same ointment to fly, it was via a demon's power that they did so. One of the recipes he recorded was a surgeon's soporific balm, and he claimed it was used by witches to induce sleep in their victims, rather than claiming that it would be used to cause the illusion of flight. It contained nightshade, again Atropa solanum species, mandrake, Mandragora officinarum, poppy, Papaver somniferum, Eurypieces rushes, the seeds of which Pliny the Elder described as a narcotic, darnel, which is Lolium tementulum, castor, likely beaver musk, castorium, rather than Ricinus communis, which is also referred to as castor. John Gerard, an English herbalist and author of the 1,484-page illustrated herbal or general history of plants, traced the medical uses of Solanum lethal, Atropa belladonna, from Dioscorides to Theophrastus. Gerard recorded that its Old English name was dwale, and that it should be called sleeping, raging, and deadly, as synonymous epithets to distinguish it from the other nightshades. Despite its efficacy as a sedative, he recorded it as having furious, deadly nature and cautioned against its use. He cited the case of 3 boys of Wisbech who did eat of the pleasant and beautiful fruit hereof, 2 whereof died in less than 8 hours after they had eaten of them. The third was saved by being given large amounts of water and honey in order to make him vomit over and over again. Gerard said, "Banish therefore these pernicious plants out of your gardens, and all places near to your houses, where children or women with child do resort, which do oftentimes long and lust after things most vile and filthy, and much more after a berry of a bright shining black colour, and of such great beauty, as it were able to allure any such to eat thereof." In 1615, Jean de Nenald wrote De la lycanthropie, Transformation et Ecstasy des sorcières, which documented a recipe to be rubbed vigorously into all parts of the body until it is flushed, in order for the pores to open up and relax, which would cause both the illusion of flight and the illusion of animal metamorphosis. It contained Hyoscyamus niger, henbane, Solanum nigrum, black nightshade, Datura stramonium, Atropa belladonna, darnel, which is again Lolium tementulum, hemlock, which is Conium maculatum, monkshood, which is Aconitum napellus, Papaver somniferum, which is the opium poppy, and opium itself, a preparation made from Papaver somniferum, Berula erecta, water parsnip, Apium graveolens, which is wild celery, Potentilla reptans, which is the creeping cinquefoil, Iris pseudoacorus, the yellow iris, and Petroselenium crispum, parsley, and Populus nigra, poplar, as along with bat's blood, hupo, which is upupa epops, blood, soot, Synoctiides, and Anachitidesca. I have no idea how you're supposed to pronounce those. Magical gemstones for summoning the gods below and the gods above, described in Pliny's Naturalis Historia, and the broth of the fat of small children. Nenald recorded that the broth of the fat of small children added no power to the soporific simples, but acted instead to incite witches to perform acts of monstrous sin and hatred for the human race. He also recorded a recipe that used only deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, wine taken in excess, and cat brains. The English author Robert Burton wrote The Anatomy of Melancholy, which I really adore. Which was first published in 1621, but republished 5 more times over the following 17 years with massive alterations and expansions. I very much sympathize about this. I keep expanding and altering my own work. Although presented as a medical textbook on the subject of melancholia, what would in modern terms be considered clinical depression, it actually serves as an encyclopedic exploration of human emotion through the lens of 17th century academia and philosophy. In his catalogue of various causes of melancholy madness, Burton commented, "Many men catch this malady by eating certain meats, herbs, roots, at unawares, as henbane, Hyacinthus niger, nightshade, Atropa belladonna, cicuta, Conium maculatum or hemlock, mandrakes, mandragora officinarum, etc." Oh, hello. This is one of my cats. I promise I won't use your brains for any flying ointments. I promise. In 1626, Francis Bacon, the English philosopher and statesman who was Attorney General and then Lord Chancellor of England, wrote a book called Silva Silvarum, A Natural History in 10 Centuries, a collection of 17th century natural medicine and philosophy. It was one of the books that led to far-reaching influences on the late stages of scientific revolution. Bacon believed that witches weren't having paranormal experiences at all, but rather that magic was a manipulation of the secrets of nature. The hallucinogenic botanical ointments proved that witches weren't actually leaving their bodies behind, and that their spirits weren't flying, but rather that the hallucinogens made them believe that they were. He stated, "The ointment that witches use is reported to be made of the fat of children digged out of their graves, of the juice of smallage, wolfbane, and cinquefoil, mingled with the meal of fine wheat. But I suppose that the soporiferous medicines are likest to do it, which are henbane, hemlock, mandrake, moonshade, tobacco, opium, saffron, poplar leaves, etc." One of the recipes he recorded in Silva Silvarum was to be applied to the forehead, neck, feet, and backbone. According to him, it would cause sleep, the illusion of flight, the illusion of metamorphosis. It contained wolfbane, so Aconitum napellus juice, smallage, which would be wild celery, Epium graveolens juice, cinquefoil, which is again Pugnatil reptans juice, meal of fine wheat, fat of children digged out of their graves, henbane, Hyacinthus niger, mandrake, mandragora officinarum, moonshade, which would be Atropa or Solanum, tobacco, Nicotiana species, hemlock, which is Conium maculatum, opium, again a preparation of Papaver somniferum, poplar, which is Populus nigra, leaves, and saffron from the Crocus sativus. In 1650, the physician and surgeon Alexander Reed, in his treatise of the first part of chirurgery, described an analgesic salve for the relief of pain during surgery or cauterization that was applied topically to the affected area. It contained henbane, Hyacinthus niger, mandrake, mandragora officinarum, deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, hemlock, Conium maculatum, opium, a preparation of Papaver somniferum, black poppy, which is Papaver somniferum, and water lily, which is Nymphaeus species. Johannes Pretorius, a German historian, wrote in his Hexen za Über und Spuk des Chichen aus dem Blocksberg in 1669 a recipe for an ointment that, along with an incantation, would cause flight with the devil's help. It also contained nightshade, Atropa or Solanum, poppy, Papaver somniferum, hemlock, Conium maculatum, heliotrope, Heliotropum europaeum, and the flesh of infants, cooked up into a mash. Gottfried Buching and Friedrich Hoffmann in De Potentia Diaboli in Corpora, published in 1703, recorded an ointment that was rubbed on wrists and the soles of feet to cause sleep and the illusion of various activities. It contained henbane, Hyacinthus niger, seeds, mandrake, mandragora officinarum, deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, berries, opium, a preparation of Papaver somniferum, hemlock, Conium maculatum seeds, darnel, Lolium tementulum seeds, badger fat, and fox fat. So we've moved away from the fat of small children and into badgers and foxes. From 1679 to 1680, Atropa belladonna may have been one of the plants that were used in a huge amount of poisoning amongst the higher ranks of French society. The affair of the poisons, as this came to be called, involved an investigative organization called La Chambre Ardente, the Fiery Room, which investigated 442 persons and ordered 367 arrests. Of these, 36 were executed, 23 were banished, and 218 were imprisoned. Some of those executed were executed for witchcraft, and others for poisonings. The most famous of these poisoners was Catherine de Chaise-Monvoisin, also called La Voisin, an abortionist who also helped women poison their husbands. One of her popular poisons was known as La Poudre de Succession, the powder of succession, sometimes translated as inheritance powder. This poison was thought to have had a base of arsenic, mixed with aconite, so Aconitum napellus, belladonna, Atropa belladonna, and opium, Papaver somniferum. She was eventually found guilty of an attempt on the king's life, and after severe torture, she was burned at the stake. Pharmacopoeias of the 1700s and 1800s provide clear instructions for making anodyne ointments from Atropa belladonna. Atropine was first isolated from Atropa belladonna in 1820 by the German pharmacist and chemist Rudolf Brands, who named the compound after the genus. Nicholas Culpeper, the English botanist, herbalist, physician, and astrologer, and author of The English Physician in 1652, later The Complete Herbal 1653, recorded that deadly nightshade was of a cold nature. In some it causes sleep, in others madness, and shortly thereafter death. Although Culpeper's herbal recommended the use of bittersweet, here called Amara dulcis, henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, mandrake, mandragora officinarum, and thornapple, Datura stramonium, and common nightshade, Solanum, for a wide varieties of complaints, he warned people away from the use of Atropa belladonna. This plant should not be suffered to grow in any places where children are, as many have been killed by eating the berries. At least as far back as the 19th century, bandages and plasters pre-treated with tropane alkaloids such as atropine were and are used as a treatment for pain and aches, including sciatica, rheumatism, sprains and strains, and even mere stiffness. The plasters are still available as a homeopathic remedy to this day, and they are extremely popular in the Middle East. Karl Keitzwetter, a leading German theosophical writer who produced a number of works on esotericism and occult beliefs and practices, mixed an ointment based on Delaporte's recipe. He described that it caused him to dream of flying in spirals. According to Anton Ritter von Perger, a 19th century Austro-Hungarian author and artist, in his book Deutsch Pflanzensagen, Gassen, Melt and Gerheit, published in 1864, on the Lower Rhine, its fruits are known as Walkerbeeren, Valkyrie berries, and the plant itself is known as the Walkerbaum, the Valkyrie tree, and anyone who ate of the berries would fall victim to the Valkyries. As late as the 19th century, southern German hunters would consume 3 or 4 belladonna berries before going out hunting, which was believed to sharpen their perception. In the 19th century, so-called by the exonym and slur-containing title, Indian cigarettes were commonly sold in pharmacies. These were smoked to treat asthma, lung and larynx ailments, neuralgia, sleeplessness, and more. They were commonly made from hemp leaves that had been soaked in an extract of opium, Papaver somniferum, together with belladonna leaves, Atropa belladonna, henbane leaves, Hyoscyamus niger, thornapple leaves, Datura stramonium, and sometimes Lobelia inflata or cherry laurel smops, Prunus laurosciraceus. The recommended dosage was 1 cigarette as needed. One recipe sold in Paris around 1870 called for 0.3 grams belladonna leaves, 0.15 grams, henbane leaves, 0.15 grams thornapple leaves, and Indian hemp leaves impregnated with opium extract and cherry laurel infusion. Unfortunately, during the 19th and 20th centuries, atropine was commonly given as an antidote to Amanita muscaria poisoning, this is fly agaric, due to the mistaken belief that muscarine was the principal toxin in Amanita muscaria. It isn't. Atropine likely aggravated the symptoms of Amanita muscaria ingestion and possibly even led to the exaggerated accounts of how poisonous Amanita muscaria was. It isn't actually all that poisonous, and it's edible if processed correctly using soaking and discarding of the soaking liquid. Despite that, I have been asked to please include Amanita muscaria in the Year 2 Witches' Poisons, which will be starting in late June of this year. And that's the summary version of the ancient history of Atropa belladonna. You can join us next time in our Witches' Poisons series, and we'll go into the recent history and incidences of poisoning, and then we'll get into the magical uses, and then we'll see if anyone has actually any interest in me posting the information that can be found in the course on the seminary website that goes into the toxicology, the contraindications, the medicinal uses, and the cultivation, and etc. Generally, I found that those videos on YouTube get very, very few views, but all of the information is in the notes that all of our patrons received. It's in the booklet that went out to patrons as well. It's also in the class that was recorded during the course last year and is up on the seminary website. So as a reminder, you can go to sanctumofthecraft.org and enroll in any of our courses that are ongoing. They're all donation based because we are in the alpha version of the seminary, and you can watch any of our past videos on there. And this one on Atropa belladonna is a 2-week class that we did. It was like an hour and a half each week, and it goes in a lot of depth into the plant. All right. Anyway, I recommend that you all, if you like this kind of content, consider enrolling in our upcoming course in late June, Witches Poisons in Depth Year 2, that you check out Year 1 that is already up on the seminary, and that you consider becoming a patron, because patrons gain access to all of our booklets, all of our notes. There are a lot of them. So you can find us at www.patreon.com/Sanctum of the Craft. Again, that's www.patreon.com/Sanctum of the Craft. And please remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more of our content. Look, Deutsch Flanze Sagen. Why are you licking me? You make it so hard to film classes. It's not your dinner. Your dinner is 45 minutes away from now. It's 45 minutes from now.